So we've ranked every position. I've ranked my top 50 players in the league, and you guys really enjoyed that video. So let's rank all 30 teams going into next year's NBA season 30-1. This isn't going to be who I think is going to get the most wins to the least wins. These are my rankings and who I think is pretty much going to win the finals from 30-1. And we got a lot of teams to talk about, so let's just get right into this. So to kick things off at number 30, I do have the Brooklyn Nets. The Nets have by far the fewest win total for this upcoming season. 19.5 wins is their over-under. This offseason, they traded away Mikal Bridges, their best player. They didn't have any draft picks in the 2024 draft. Their big free agency signing was Killian Hayes. I think this team is obviously trying to tank for Cooper Flagg, and they want to win as few games as possible. Cam Thomas may win them a game or two, but I also expect them to move guys like Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, and Dennis Schroeder at the deadline. So yeah, I'm sorry, Nets fans. This is probably what you want to happen, though. I do think they're going to be the worst team in the NBA this upcoming season. Coming in one spot ahead of the Brooklyn Nets, we're going to stay in the Eastern Conference. I have the Washington Wizards. I think this is going to be another figure-it-out year for Washington. They want to see what they have in Bilal Coulibaly and their 3 first-round picks from this most recent draft. They still have to pay Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, whose contract should be a little bit more easier to move at the deadline. I expect Malcolm Brogdon to be gone after the deadline, Jonas Valanciunas and Sadiq Bey as well, because they want to see what they have in this young core. They're fine being bad. There's just 28 teams that are better in the NBA, in my opinion. So I do think the Wizards are going to be better than the Nets, but not by too much. Coming in at number 28, it's going to be the worst team in the Western Conference, and that is going to be the Portland Trail Blazers. I do believe here in 2024, this is the most talented the NBA has ever been. This is one of the best teams I've ever predicted to be the worst team in their conference in Portland. If you just look at this team, they have so much talent. They have Scoot, Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, Jeremy Grant, Denny Avdija, Donovan Clingan, DeAndre Ayton. That's a talented roster for a team that is projected to have just 22.5 wins this year and finish 15th in the Western Conference. But somebody has to finish 15th in that conference, and by default, I'm gonna go with Portland. There's a lot of inexperience with most of this roster, and I do expect some of the veterans to get traded as well, including Robert Williams, who I didn't even mention before. Yeah, this is a talented 15th seed. Coming in at number 27, a spot ahead of the Blazers in the West, I do have the Utah Jazz. So the Jazz did re-sign Larry Markkanen this offseason. They made 3 nice draft picks, Cody Williams in the lottery, Isaiah Collier in the first round, and then getting Kyle Filipowski earlier in the second round. They did keep Walker Kessler this offseason, brought in Patty Mills, Drew Eubanks, and Svi Mykhailiuk. Now Chris Stone is on the Clippers. This team has a lot of fun young talent. I'm expecting a big year too from Taylor Hendricks and Keontae George. I think it's going to be another big year for Larry Markkanen, and I think Walker Kessler can go back to what he was in his rookie season at the 5 spot. It's just somebody has to finish 14th in the West. It's a very competitive conference, and I do think the Jazz lack talent right now to finish any higher. Coming in at number 26, I have the Detroit Pistons. I do think the Detroit Pistons are going to be noticeably better from what they were last year. They were the laughingstock of the NBA last year, a massive losing streak. I like what they did this offseason, though. Brought in a new head coach in JB Bickerstaff, who's more defensive-minded than Monty Williams. I do really like the draft pick of Ron Holland 5th overall. Bobby Klintman in the 2nd gets a thumbs up from me. And bringing in veterans around Cade Cunningham was huge. Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, and Tobias Harris. Now, they're not going to light the world on fire. They're not going to bring them to the playoffs, but this team should be more balanced around Cade Cunningham, and that is the number 1 priority for Detroit. I still think there's something to get out of Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart, as well as Asor Thompson. It was just a 5th overall pick a year ago. I think Detroit is going to look a lot better this season, but the East is still very competitive. Like I said, this is the most talented the NBA has ever been, in my opinion. Someone's got to finish 13th in the East. Coming one spot ahead of Detroit in the Eastern Conference at number 25, I have the Toronto Raptors. I do think the Raptors are very top-heavy right now after Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and Jakob Poeltl falls off a little bit. And yes, they could get something out of Grady Dick in year number 2, Bruce Brown before they trade him, or Jacoby Walter, who's a rookie. But you got to stack them up against every other team in the Eastern Conference. I don't think that they're going to be too competitive this year, which is fine because they have a nice nucleus right now of Barnes, Quickley, and Barrett. And if they can land a top 3 pick in this upcoming draft to add another stud to that trio, the Raptors could be a very fun team to watch in 2026. Before we get back into the top 25, I just want to give a quick word from today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. NFL season, college football season is in full swing. The WNBA and MLB playoffs are here. NBA season is right around the corner, and Underdog Fantasy is by far the best way to play fantasy sports. I'm going to be using their pick'em feature all season long. You can do 2 entries, up to 8 entries, and you can 100 times your money in a single night. And Underdog Fantasy does so many profit boosts, so many promos, free plays, that it makes it silly not to capitalize on these offers. And you can use my code SROS, SROS, or the link in the description to get a 50% deposit match up to $2,000. So if you put in $2,000, you're going to get $1,000 in free play, and that's code SROS. And thank you again to Underdog for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back into the ranking. So coming in at number 24, I do have the Chicago Bulls. Now, the Chicago Bulls have a ton of talent still on their roster. They didn't move Zach LaVine or Nikola Vucevic this offseason. Yes, they traded away Alex Caruso, but they didn't bring in a future draft pick. They brought in Josh Giddey, who's still a solid player right now. Still got Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. They drafted Matas Buzelis, re-signed Patrick Williams, brought in Jalen Smith. This is a solid roster that I think should stay competitive somewhat in the Eastern Conference throughout the first half of the year, but I do expect them to be sellers at the deadline, so they're not going to be good throughout the second half of the season. And I just think they have a limited ceiling as a team. I don't think the floor is as low as it is for the Nets or the Wizards to finish as the worst team in the Eastern Conference, because they didn't finish as the worst team last year with no Zach LaVine. So even if a LaVine injury happens, they have plenty of talent not to bottom out, but I don't think that their ceiling is super high. Coming in at number 23, I think a team that could actually have a high ceiling in the Eastern Conference and that can get them into the play-in tournament, and that is the Charlotte Hornets. I just want to see a healthy LaMelo Ball season. I just want to see him play 70-plus games with Brandon Miller, Mark Williams, and Tidjane Salaam, and get to watch Hornets play-in tournament basketball, because I think they have the talent to do so. I love the hiring of Charles Smith. I like the draft pick of Tidjane Salaam in the role he's going to be given this year. I think Nick Smith can have a nice year too. They got Josh Green for basically nothing this offseason. They re-signed Miles Bridges. This team has the talent to go to the play-in tournament and has a higher ceiling than Chicago or Toronto or Detroit, in my opinion, in the Eastern Conference this season. Coming in at number 22, I'm a little bit lower on them. They're in the West. Somebody's got to finish as the third worst team in the West, and it's going to be the San Antonio Spurs. The San Antonio Spurs didn't really have the greatest offseason. They didn't trade for a Lauri Markkanen or a Brandon Ingram. They drafted Stephon Castle number 4 overall, but they traded the 8th overall pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves for a pick in the 2030s. I love the signing of Chris Paul. They ended up getting Harrison Barnes to orchestrate the DeMar DeRozan to Sacramento sign and trade, and that is pretty much it. I don't think this team got too much better this offseason, and like I said multiple times in this video, the West is super talented. It is super competitive, and I think it's more likely that Chris Paul ends up getting traded at the deadline than is bringing the San Antonio Spurs to the playoffs this year. But I do think Wemby is obviously going to be great in year number 2, but I'm expecting a nice year 3 jump from Jeremy Sohan. So just missing out on the top 20, at number 21, we have the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks are a really interesting team because they have plenty of talent right now, but I don't think that they're a playoff team whatsoever. And they just had the number 1 overall pick. They traded away DeJounte Murray this offseason to the Pelicans. They didn't bring back any big offensive-minded players in that trade, brought back Larry Nance Jr. and Dyson Daniels and obviously a couple future draft picks. I just think this year matters on the progression of Jalen Johnson and Zachary Reese-Sachet next to each other. Hopefully this is the Onyeka Okongwu breakout season and we see Clint Capella get traded. And I'm excited to see a fully healthy Trae Young team. I think they could be very competitive throughout the regular season. I do expect them to be in the play-in tournament. I think that's the highest we see them though. So starting off at number 20, I have the LA Clippers, and man, it's gotta stink to hear the Clippers name here at number 20. For the last 5 years, when they got Kawhi and Paul George in 2019, they were always a top 10 team. They were always a team that was talked about to win the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, and this year, they're closer to 30 than they are to 1. Losing Paul George hurts a ton. I do like what they did in response to that, bringing in Derrick Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, Mo Bamba, and Nick Batum. But man, come on. They lost Paul George and they brought in those guys. Yes, they brought back James Harden. I think we could see something out of Jordan Miller or Cam Christie or Kobe Brown this season. But if a Kawhi injury happens, if a James Harden injury happens, this team may end up as one of the worst teams in the Western Conference. Coming in at number 19, I have the Houston Rockets. This is just a very competitive conference. Last year, they go 41-41. They looked phenomenal under Ime Udoka in his first year there in Houston. It's just, I don't know who they're leapfrogging right now in the West. They have a ton of talent, but I'm a little worried there could be some hero ball between Şengün and Jalen Green because both of these guys are fighting for their next contract. But I don't think it's going to impact them enough at all. I think they could be a play-in tournament team. I loved what Fred VanVleet did for this team last year. You got Cam Whitmore, a year 3 Jabari Smith Jr., Amen Thompson, Reed Shepard, Tari Eason's going to be healthy. This is a very deep roster, and they could definitely make the playoffs 100%. I'm just a little conservative right now because we haven't seen it yet, and that's going to be on me if they prove me wrong, which I hope they do. Coming in at number 18, I want to respect one of the GOATs of this generation, Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors failed this offseason to add anybody next to Steph. They didn't go after Lauri Markkanen hard enough. They didn't get a Paul George or a Jimmy Butler. There's no number 2 on paper next to Steph, and they lost Klay Thompson. Now, I think adding Buddy Hield, DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson is actually pretty solid in replacement of Klay Thompson. It's just this West is very competitive, and I don't know if Jonathan Kuminga could take that year 4 leap to being a number 2 as a scoring option next to Steph for this team to make the playoffs. I think Curry's going to carry them. If they make a trade at the deadline, sure. If they add a Brandon Ingram or somebody like that, I could view this team a little bit differently, but I do think their ceiling is around the 6th seed in the West, even though I do think this is probably one of their deeper rosters in recent memory. They can withstand any injury, not to Steph. They just need Draymond to not get suspended at all this season. Coming in at number 17, a ton of talent, but I just don't know how they're going to gel together. I don't know if Brandon Ingram is going to be on the team at the end of the year, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans. Yes, DeJounte Murray is going to be better than what CJ McCollum gave them as the point guard from last season, but I don't know how much he's going to make this team better. He didn't look great defensively last year. He definitely tried to play a little bit hero ball for that Hawks team in the fourth quarter, and he was going from the number 1 option when Trey was out last year to probably the number 3 option behind Zion and Ingram. This team's center depth is Yves Missi, an unproven rookie, Daniel Tice, and Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. They desperately need a center. They could try out Zion with some small ball 5, but I just wonder about the fluidity of this team in the Western Conference, where continuity and chemistry matters a ton to go far, especially in the West. And just missing out on the top 15, I do have the Miami Heat. Yeah, the Miami Heat didn't do too much this offseason. They re-signed Hayward Highsmith. They drafted Khalil Ware. They lost Caleb Martin to the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, if we do get a fully healthy Jimmy Butler, maybe a Defensive Player of the Year season from Bam Adebayo, this team could finish better than where I have them in the Eastern Conference. But with teams around them getting better and that are younger than them, I worry about the defensive backcourt of Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero, and the looming Jimmy Butler final year of his contract as well. There's a lot of question marks with the Miami Heat, and that's why I'm hesitant to put them in my top 15. So kicking off the top 15, I have the Sacramento Kings. Like the Pelicans, I think the Sacramento Kings are uber talented. They added DeMar DeRozan and Devin Carter this offseason. I'm really excited to watch another year of Keegan Murray mold into one of the better 3-and-D power forwards in this league. Sabonis got MVP votes last year. De'Aaron Fox is a great young point guard, but Fox could also be a free agent in 2 years, and there's some skepticism that he's going to sign a long-term deal. I don't know what that's going to be for the Kings. I love what I saw from Keon Ellis defensively in the second half. It's just this West is so talented, man, and maybe they end up as a 4 seed, and I would love to see it. I'm always rooting for the Kings after I watched that team just miss on every single draft pick in the 2010s. It's just tough to put them over my 14 team, because 14, I have the LA Lakers, and I just can't count out LeBron just yet. LeBron is going to be 40 years old in December, which is insane that he's still a top 10 player in this league. Anthony Davis played like a top 10 player last year, but the Lakers also didn't make too many additions this offseason. They lost Taurean Prince. The only addition was Christian Koloko. They drafted Dalton Connect, which I loved. Bronny James in the second has its question marks. D'Angelo Russell opted in, and they got an elite regular season from D'Angelo Russell, pretty much a healthy season from LeBron, AD, Russell, and Reeves last year, and they ended up as the 17th in the Western Conference. So I don't think that they are going to be a non-playing tournament playoff team in the West, but I do expect them to be in the playing tournament once again. Coming in at number 13, it's a team that went to a Game 7 of a playoff series in round number 1. They're young. They signed a great 3-and-D veteran this offseason, the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic, yeah, they signed KCP. Paolo Banchero is primed for a breakout year number 3 and be on an All-NBA team. If Franz Wagner can go back to what he was as a 3-point shooter in year 1 and year 2, this team could definitely make a conference finals run in an Eastern Conference that, in my opinion, is wide open if you're not going up against Boston in round number 1 or round number 2. Coming in at number 12, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're basically running it back. They were the team that beat the Orlando Magic last year in round number 1, re-signed Evan Mobley, re-signed Donovan Mitchell, drafted Jalen Tyson. I do worry about some big man depth on this team. They didn't really address that this offseason. Don't really love Tristan Thompson as the third guy there, but this team has its depth. They have a new head coach in Kenny Atkinson, who did a great job with Brooklyn the last time he was a head coach. Another year of chemistry and continuity with this team in the Eastern Conference. Let's see if they can make it out of round 2, which is definitely possible because last year they were very banged up against Boston in the Eastern Conference semifinal. Coming in at number 11, just missing out on the top 10, I got the Memphis Grizzlies. We went from a point where I think everybody was forgetting about the Grizzlies, where now everybody wants to talk about the Grizzlies. Yes, they're going to be great this season. Last time they were fully healthy in 2023, they were the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Ja Morant played like a top 5 point guard in the league, and I think we could see that again this season. I just want to give it a year before I mark them again as a top 7 team in this league. But hey, Jaren Jackson Jr. won Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. Desmond Bane was one of the better 3-point shooters. They drafted Zach Edey, which I'm very excited to see how that offense operates around. So to kick off the top 10, I have the Phoenix Suns. Oh man, this is a big year for Phoenix. Last year was definitely a disappointment. They went all in. They traded for Bradley Beal in the 2023 offseason, and then they just get swept in round number 1 by the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I like their offseason. I like them getting Ryan Dunn, and Oso Ighodaro in the draft. Defensive-minded guys that can help the Suns on that end of the floor. I love the additions. Obviously, you have Tyus Jones on the minimum. Are you kidding me? Monty Morris as well. I do think that they have a big man issue because Jusuf Nurkic, in my opinion, cannot be your main guy in a playoff series with how many talented bigs there are in the Western Conference. So that's the thing that's holding me back from putting them any higher. Coming in at number 9 is a team that was in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, the Indiana Pacers. And the Indiana Pacers are basically running it back. This team re-signed Obi Toppin this offseason. Pascal Siakam worked out an extension with Andrew Nembhard. I'm expecting a nice year 2 from Jarris Walker. Benedict Matherin's going to be healthy. This team has a lot of talent, and they are incredibly deep. Also re-signed TJ McConnell. Forgot to mention that, and he was good for them in the playoffs last season. I would just like to see them beat a fully healthy team. The Knicks were banged up. The Bucks were banged up. That's not their fault. They beat the teams in front of them. I just want to see them prove me wrong again. Coming in at number 8, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. Yes, one spot ahead of the Indiana Pacers. I do believe if Giannis and Dame were fully healthy last year, even with all the inconsistencies and negatives the Milwaukee Bucks had around that team, they would have beaten the Pacers if Giannis and Dame were healthy. Now we're going to get them with Doc Rivers for a year, which is always going to make me be hesitant on putting them in a deep playoff run, but I still believe that Giannis is a top 2 player in this league. Can Dame go back to what he was in his final year in Portland? I like their veteran additions this offseason. Taurean Prince, DeLon Wright, they're solid, but this team is getting up there in age. It's now or never for Milwaukee. Coming in at number 7, a little bit lower on them this year, even though I believe they have the best player in the NBA. I got the Denver Nuggets. Losing KCP is going to hurt a ton. Jamal Murray did not look great throughout the Olympics playing for Team Canada. He's always kind of been inconsistent throughout the regular season as well. Aaron Gordon is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. They lost their first round pick DeRon Holmes to a season-ending injury that happened in the Summer League. Now, I do like the addition of Russell Westbrook, and I am very high on Christian Brown and Julian Strawther to replace KCP for about 70% of what he can give you. But I think the rest of the West got better. They're a little bit younger than this team. And it's going to be nice to see Denver maybe not have sky-high confidence that they had coming off their 23 championship run in their second round exit last year. And now they're going to be playing with a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder. Coming in at number 6, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. Yes, I know I have them kind of high for a team that is yet to make it to the conference finals in the Joel Embiid era, but they just added Paul George this offseason, who's going to be their number 3 scoring option because I think Maxey is going to be even better this season. And I think they did a good job filling out the rest of their roster with limited cap space. I like the draft pick of Jared McCain. Obviously, getting Caleb Martin was big, bringing back Kyle Lowry, bringing back Oubre, bringing in Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, Reggie Jackson, Gershon Yabusele, who was the star of the Olympics. And they also re-signed KJ Martin, around $7 million a year. They have some draft capital. I think he's going to be moved at the deadline, and this team is going to get even better after February. So they just missed out on the top 5. Coming in at number 5, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves had a great offseason as well. Who would have thought they were going to end up getting Rob Dillingham and trading up with San Antonio to get the 8th overall pick? I love them getting Terrence Shannon at the end of the first round. This team has the depth. They had the 6th man of the year from last year, and they had the breakout star in Anthony Edwards. This team has the talent to go all the way and win the NBA Finals. The big question mark, will that front court work in the playoffs? Can Gobert and Cat coexist to win 4 straight playoff series? Coming in at number 4, I got the New York Knicks, a team that made one of the biggest moves this offseason, getting Mikal Bridges. They have a guy that got MVP votes last year in Jalen Brunson. They're going to get a healthy Julius Randle. The Knicks in January last year, after trading for OG Anunoby, were the best team in basketball net rating wise. Now you're adding Mikal Bridges, but a big blow was losing Isaiah Hartenstein. Mitchell Robinson is already banged up. They have massive center question marks. That's what's making me not want to put them in the top 3. If they somehow trade for a center at the deadline, or Mitchell Robinson actually looks like a different Mitchell Robinson, yes, I would put them higher. I just don't know if small ball with Randall at the 5 offensively and OG at the 5 defensively could take them all the way. Coming in at number 3, I have a team that was in the NBA Finals, the Dallas Mavericks. You know what? The Mavericks had a pretty good offseason. Yes, they lost Derrick Jones Jr. He left to the LA Clippers. I love them trading Tim Hardaway Jr. and seconds for Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes was so good for the Knicks in 2023 and is going to be in a similar role in Dallas. They brought in Najee Marshall, who I think could have a Derrick Jones Jr. breakout season for them in the playoffs. They also brought in Klay Thompson, one of the best shooters of all time. They have great big man depth, another year of chemistry with Luka, with PJ Washington, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford. This team could definitely win it all next year. I just want to see Luka in shape and be better defensively throughout the regular season. So coming in at number 2, it's the team that won it all last year, the Boston Celtics. Yes, I don't have them number 1. We have yet to see a team go back to the finals after winning it all in the year prior. The last time we saw that was the Golden State Warriors in 2019. It's been that long. Now, the Celtics are still arguably the best team in the NBA, right? I still think everyone's going to have them at the top of the Eastern Conference, but Drew's a year older, Al Horford's a year older, Kristaps Porzingis is already banged up. They played a lot of minutes last year, winning the finals, and 3 of their players playing in the Olympics. although Tatum didn't play too much in the Olympics. And this team is still incredibly talented. They're my best team in the Eastern Conference right now. I just think one team is better. And coming in at number 1, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were the 1 seed last year as the youngest 1 seed ever. So their young core is going to get better. They traded Josh Giddey, who was their one negative asset in the playoffs, for Alex Caruso, who's arguably the best role player in all of the NBA, arguably the best 3-and-D guard in this league, was on an all-defensive team last year. And they signed Isaiah Hartenstein, who was elite defensively for the Knicks, elite as a connecting piece, inside scorer, passer, defender, and they got him for cap space. They didn't have to give up a single asset for him. Year 3, J-Dub. Year 2, Chet. Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Lou Dort, great role players around Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who finished runner-up in MVP voting. This is by far the most deepest team in the NBA, in my opinion, and I do think the Oklahoma City Thunder are the best team in the NBA. So that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Drop a thumbs up if you did. If you agree or disagree with any of these selections, please let me know in the comments below. Make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy. Link is in the description. Use code SROS, S-R-O-S, to get a 50% deposit match up to $2,000. Thank you again for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.